We call it D-Day because that was, I did die that day. 20, 30 minutes out on the road, I was gone.
Your heart stopped?
My heart stopped.
Hey, hey, hey. Welcome back to Permission to Shine. It's your host, Andrew Nemani. I slept like dog poop last night, tossing, turning, stressing, thinking of a million things. So the fact that I got to sit down with Brad Cunningham today is divine timing. Brad overcame death in his 20s. In his 50s, again, he was tested and had to overcome death. It's a story like I've never heard before. You've probably never heard anything like this. And this is the first time he's opening up about it on an interview. He's a very private man. I feel very lucky to share his story. The takeaway for me, life is short. We never know when it's going to change in an instance. So be thankful, be grateful, squeeze all of the juice out of today that you can, because our time is limited. Please enjoy this conversation. If you enjoy it, Brad also has a book called Resilience Unbroken, My Story of Two Survivals. Please enjoy this conversation with Brad Cunningham. Lastly, a thank you to our sponsor, Ajax Partners. It's a sales consulting firm. If you are a CEO or a sales leader looking for sales consulting help, reach out. Andrew@ajax.partners is the email where you can contact them. Let's get into it, guys. And just remember, squeeze the juice out of life today.
Okay, so you're 25, making money, you're in the restaurant scene, you're a great looking guy. Are you like infatuated with the women of Chicago as well?
I got caught up in a cycle, that I was in when I was in college, actually. That's not where I was picturing myself to go to Chicago and be in the restaurant scene. I wasn't. That's when everything happened, right? I think it was, it was probably about 6 months in. I started to see the signs in November. I was getting these bruises, they were like this big, like a grapefruit almost in some cases. Some were smaller, but there was one on my thigh that was like a grapefruit. They had no explanation for where that bruise came from. And then there were lumps that were popping up in areas, again, that people couldn't see. They were visible enough. They weren't huge, but I was like, what is that? And then these red dots were appearing all around my ankles. And I'm like, where is this coming from? And again, I'm in this restaurant. I'm making good money, doing all the things we talked about. It was a Friday night. I went out to dinner with some friends. I worked Saturday night, very busy shift. Again, holidays, we're approaching the holidays. Didn't notice that I was sweating so much. It was somebody one of the tables that I was waiting on noticed it. They're like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I think so. I think it's just been a busy day." Go to my GM, the general manager, and I told him, I said, "I don't feel good. I think I probably need to, the shift was almost over anyway. I think I'm going to cut out early." Go to bed, wake up Sunday morning. Progressively throughout that day on Sunday, I started to feel worse, right? To the point where, I'm probably going to need to go to the hospital. Keep in mind, I'm waiting tables. I don't have insurance at this point in time. So I'm very reluctant. My mom is a nurse, right? 40 years in the nursing field. And she was working for a family care physician in the Quad Cities. So I called her and I said, "Can I come down and see, this doctor, right? And just have him check me out." Because I said, something's not right. And Andrew, I'm not kidding. It was probably 2 or 3 minutes into that calling my mom that I literally, and it's still, when I think about it, I can still feel it. It was this feeling of an engine, kind of dying, right? It's like, that's what I felt. And it was like audible, to me, that I could hear it. And I went down. When I woke up, I was soaking wet. And, fortunately, I was able to, it's a longer story, but I did finally make it to the emergency room, and they looked at me in the waiting room and they're like, "Get him in here right now." And that's when all the questions started coming at me. Right. So this is early 90s, almost in an accusatory way. The questions they were asking me, I was like, are you homosexual? Are you intravenous drug user? Are you having unprotected sex? All this. And I'm like thinking to myself, I've got AIDS, or HIV or something. I'm like, it just like, that was the first thought in my mind, but that was what was going on at that time. It was pretty new, and it was scary. They put me in a room and I go out, fall asleep. And it was 1 o'clock in the morning when I get a tap on the shoulder, and it's two doctors, and they're like, "Hey, we have some news for you." And, they're like, "It's not AIDS." And I will tell you the relief in my body, like that I felt when they told me that. I was like, "Oh God, thank God." But you have this thing called Burkitt leukemia. And I'm like, "I don't know what that is." And they're like, "Well, essentially it is leukemia and lymphoma kind of at the same time." It was very rare. They usually only see it in kids. I had them call my parents immediately. I'm like, "Call my mom, explain what's going on to her, because I don't understand a thing you're saying, and I'm really tired." It's like,
You're like, I'm just a 25-year-old kid trying to have fun in Chicago.
just like, I think I have a shift tomorrow, so I gotta get out. But so I remember the conversation, they're telling my mom what's going on, and I can hear it in my mom's voice, right? I mean, she was panicked. I mean, they immediately, my mom and dad got in a car and drove up to Chicago. Decision was made to transfer me to Iowa City, University of Iowa Hospital and Clinics there, just because my parents were 45 minutes away from Iowa City. It was clear that this wasn't going to be an overnight stay for me. I mean, this was going to be something that was really, really bad, and that I was probably going to be in the hospital for a while. Protocol that they put me on was experimental. I was the first person in the US to go through this protocol. The way I had to sign a waiver. What choice do I have here? They were essentially going to put me through 6 cycles of chemotherapy, aggressive chemotherapy, a week at a time, and then they would leave me alone for 2 weeks and hope that I recover. So, in their words, or well, I'm going to paraphrase. What I heard was that they were going to try to kill me and hope that I came back. Right. So it was like, we're going to kill everything in your body, including the cancer. And hopefully that you are strong enough to recover. I was young, 25. I was relatively healthy, other than obviously this cancer. I'll never forget the first session when they put the IV in and the chemo went in. And after hearing what they were going to do and what they wanted to do, you feeling that go through into your body, and kind of having that sensation of like, oh my God, you can feel it. It was warm. It kind of tingled a little bit. And then you're like, oh, what's going to happen? you know, they just there's no description for, when you start chemotherapy. And as aggressive as it was, I mean, it was over a 5-day period that they would just keep pumping into me every day, every day, every day.
And was your mindset at the time like, hey, I'm going to beat the shit out of this thing? Or are you like, man, I might die?
I was scared. I mean, there was a lot of uncertainty, right? And there was some fear, just not knowing what was going on. Having my mom there, I will say, was great, because she was, like I said, a nurse, and she could hear things, what the doctors were saying, and explain to me. I basically, said to her, I said, just you take care of that. I'm going to focus on getting myself better. Right. And that was kind of my mindset at the time. And there was a lot, to be honest with you, that was kept from me during that time. I mean, I was told after the fact that I was 3 times the doctors pulled my parents over that I was literally in the hospital for 6 months. There was, I think, 3 nights that they told my parents that I wasn't going to make it through the night. Now, I didn't know that until after the fact, because I never honestly felt that bad, because it's all inside you. You can't see it. It's not like you could look in a mirror and be like, oh my God, this is really bad. Right? You just know that things are going through your body, and you're progressively losing weight. I mean, I got down to about 140 pounds. You lose your hair, you lose your eyebrows. I mean, when you say you lose your hair, you lose everything. That's all.
You're lucky you saw that handsome face, brother.
I know, right? You're 25 years old and you're like, oh my God, and I'm going bald.
Like in your 20s, you're vain, you're living in
You are
Chicago.
very vain.
Like,
Yeah, I was in Chicago. I was bartender. I was, doing all this stuff, living the nightlife and having all, and it's just,
actors,
yeah. I mean, it was intoxicating being around those people, to be honest with you. And it was jarring, to have all of that happen. Yeah, that 6 month stay was, pretty much due to the fact that, when they were killing everything, my immune system was decimated as well.
Mhm.
Right. So any little thing, I was restricted on diet. I was restricted on where I could go and who could come in the room. because I did, if I get sick, there's not a lot they can do. When I look back at it, I'm actually grateful. It was almost a gift for that to happen to me. I would never wish that on anybody to go through what I went through. I think, as I said earlier, where I was in my life, I think I'd probably still be waiting tables today if that didn't happen to me. There was no reason for me to not, because I was young, I was making money, I was having the time of my life. I don't think there was anything that was going to, it wasn't like somebody could come to me and be like, "Hey, buddy, you got to get your, you could get straight. You've got an investment banking career ahead of you." And I'm like, I don't think that would have happened. An intervention or anything like that would have happened, would have changed anything. And I think about that a lot. What if this cancer didn't happen? What would have happened to me? Because it was the kick in the proverbial butt that I needed, right, to kind of get me off of that cycle, right? Otherwise, I was never going to get off. I'm grateful for that, in an odd sort of way. The hair, yeah, that was hard, all this other stuff, but I'm alive. I've got, I've got all of that.
And you went on to have an amazing career, right? You've been vice president at how many companies?
Absolutely. I went to work for, a consulting firm right out of, I got my master's degree because the doctors didn't want me to go back to work right away. So I got my master's degree, did that. That was kind of the transition. Crazily enough, I got to see the doctor that diagnosed me in Chicago at Northwestern. I continued to see him when I moved back to Chicago to go to grad school. One of the things I left out there was you know, getting done with the chemotherapy and getting released from all of that wasn't the end of that story. What I was told is that I was not cured, which is scary enough, that this could come back. And what I was going to need, what they were going to do is have me come in every Wednesday for the next 2 years and get a blood test done. That was actually harder than the chemotherapy itself. That kind of weekly, every week, prepping yourself to go into that office, get your blood work done, and wait, 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 wait. And then you get the result, and it's like, oh God, I feel, like I might, okay. So you feel good for maybe, the rest of the day on Wednesday, and maybe Thursday, you feel good on Friday. By Saturday and Sunday, everything starts creeping back. Like as Wednesday's getting closer, you couldn't forget, right? There was no way it wasn't going to go away. It was this thing that was just going to be a constant part of your life. It's like, oh, your cancer's done. Well, cancer doesn't go away, right? It's with you for the rest of your life.
Thank you for sharing this, Brad, because I think it helps put all of us as a listener into perspective. Like I had a bad night of sleep last night because I just have some entrepreneurial uncertainties right now. And I was tossing and turning. I was fucking pissed off, if I'm being honest. And it's like, now I'm listening to this and it's like, what am I concerned about? I don't have cancer. I'm not worried about my life being good, but there's not as high of a chance as you had. Like you had legitimate cause for concern and worry. And we spend so much of our life wasting it away, worried about small little things. So thank you for sharing this.
No, you're absolutely right. While they told my parents 3 times, maybe more, that I wasn't going to make it through the night, I never really felt that. It was in my head that I was going to get through this. And it was hard when you're there. Because there's other people, you're kind of segregated in this area, right? With a whole bunch of other people that are going through similar versions of what I'm going through. A number of nights, blue lights went off in the middle of the night, and I woke up and the room across from me was empty. When the blue light goes off, you know what that means. And I witnessed that multiple times, and that's hard. And that's why they encouraged you not to get close to anyone, like relationship wise. So, the loneliness in that area, you're surrounded by a bunch of people, but you're encouraged not to make friends
For 6 months.
for 6 months. So you're kind of going through all of that alone in a way. I really learned the difference between friends and acquaintances. When this first got in and the word started to get a circle around to my fraternity members and, and other folks, I was getting cards, letters, gifts. I probably had 6 copies of The Firm. Remember that book, The Firm, the movie that Tom Cruise is in. I was just like, for whatever reason, it became a joke. Cause I was like, oh my God, another copy of The Firm. Great. The influx of cards that was so great. Like the first couple, 2, 3 weeks, and maybe even the first month. It was stacks. They would come in and lay down on my desk. Here we get into like month 2 or so. And it's like, The stack is like down to here now. Very small. Start to realize that, hey, I'm still going through all this. All you people, I'm still dealing with this, and I'm going to be dealing with this for a much longer period of time. And it was the people that kept showing up, that were there, that you start to realize that there's a big difference between these acquaintances. You have a lot of acquaintances in your life. You will, and you do, but you have very few friends, right? And I think that's important to distinguish that, because you want to keep those friends, especially in moments like this, when you're going through something this severe. You want to have those people right there by you, and know that they're there for the long haul.
Great reminder. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
You mentioned that you didn't have insurance. What happened with the bills?
Because I was under 25 when I was in college. I was on my parents' insurance. I had just come off of his insurance, which thank God I did, because the bills were astronomical when you go to look at a 6-month stay in a hospital and what they were doing. So the University of Iowa has, and I don't know the specifics here, but I was considered an indigent patient, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but indigent kind of means that I'm just a welfare case, basically, that they're going to take care of it. So Iowa City Hospital there covered everything.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, the bill was,
Do you know what it was?
like close to $1 million, which doesn't sound like that much. I think
That's a lot of money.
Yeah,
It's
right.
millions.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. How something like that, something catastrophic, can destroy your life.
You have this 30-year chunk, right? We'll kind of fast forward through this. You go on to have a successful career. You
Yep.
meet an amazing wife. You're running marathons. I mean, you guys live a very active life, right? You a lot of friends. You're out a lot. You're working out. You did RAGBRAI at least a few times. I know.
Yeah.
Right across Iowa.
I was riding probably 300 miles a week.
Wow. July 2023, and things changed quickly for you.
Absolutely. That was the day. We call it affectionately, we call it D-Day. It was July 23rd of 2023. Allison, my wife, and I, we got up for a normal walk. We got probably a quarter mile from the house, and lights out. Everything went dark. That is why we call it D-Day, because that was, I did die that day. I was gone for about 20, 30 minutes. A lot of this I don't remember. I had to piece a lot of this to what I talk about now. I will, piece a lot of this together with what my wife has told me.
Because she was right by your side.
She was there, thank God. And honestly, when I would go for walks with Grace in those early mornings, or go on my 60-mile bike rides, I was by myself. Always, always. For whatever reason that day, she decided to get up and go with me, early. And thank God she did, because we wouldn't be having this conversation right now if she wasn't there. I remember saying to her, I don't feel well. I think I need to sit down for a minute. Go to sit down. And that's all I remember. I don't remember if I fell. Apparently I did fall, because I had a huge gash on my knee, on my left knee. But I don't remember much from after that point. So what I will describe is what, kind of my wife, what she shared with me. I think 20, 30 minutes out on the road, I was gone. And she was doing
So was that when your heart stopped?
My heart stopped. She was doing CPR. She called 911, got them on board, and she didn't know how to do CPR, which there's a lesson there. Everybody should learn how to do CPR. A person on the 911 call was able to talk Allison through it. So she was doing the CPR, ambulance, and my mom was able to get there. By that time, again, what Allison has said is that they had pulled her aside and told her to prepare herself, for the worst, is this wasn't looking good. They did manage to get me into the ambulance, and they got me back. I did come back when I was in the ambulance. They got my heart going again.
With those, what do you call those again? When they rub them together and then shock you? Is that what they're using? Do you
They
know?
were using that on the, out on that road. They were doing that as well. They got these as a machine that they kind of is, doing the CPR and everything else. So they were able to get my heart started again. Out on the road there, got me to the hospital. In the emergency room, my heart stopped again for about 20 minutes. So all told, I left for, around 50 minutes, maybe close to an hour. Time gets lost. I mean, Allison says time's lost when she's like, I'm not quite sure exactly how long, but it was a significant amount of time. And they told her in the emergency room, when they were trying to get my heart started again, that wasn't going to happen. And they were like this close from calling it, and that they were going to pronounce me dead. And then one of the nurses or doctors was like, "Wait, wait, 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 wait. We have a heartbeat. It's faint, but there's a heartbeat." I did get my heart started again, and that began a 71-day journey in the hospital. I was in induced coma for 3 to 4 weeks in intensive care, obviously, for 3 to 4 weeks of that. They had this technique where they basically freeze your body, um, you know, take your body temperature down to a certain level to get all the blood to flow to your brain, because they thought I was brain dead. I mean, one of the doctors told Allison, "There's no point in doing anything more. He's brain dead. Been gone too long." It's kind of fun to, talk with my doctors, my cardiologist doctors now. He said to me, he's like, "So this is what brain dead looks like, huh?" I'm like, "Yeah, isn't that kind of cool?" Anyway, but they were Allison and my mom were not. They were going to give up, right? My mom to this day, she said she could see something in my eyes. When they were getting ready to, to call it. I can't even imagine, like, what Allison, my wife, went through and what she's probably still dealing with today, PTSD. I can't imagine what she's dealing with and what that was like for her. She doesn't like to talk about it very much because it's hard. I mean, they didn't take many pictures. She didn't want pictures of what was going on, and the ones that I have seen, pictures I have seen, it's the machines that I have hooked up to me. I was intubated 3 times, which isn't good. It was an interesting day, put it that way. So,
Where do you think that we go when we die? Do you think there's a heaven? Do you think our existence just ends?
I get asked that a lot. Did I see anything? And I don't honestly. I would think I would remember if I did see something, and I don't. I don't remember. What I do remember is coming back. Those moments when I did come back. And that kind of that flushing back, and it's like, I wasn't awake. I was like in that induced coma, right? But um, I don't remember like any like lights or anybody, standing there waiting for me or anything like that. I mean, you hear that, but I do get asked that a lot, and I don't necessarily remember that part, but I do remember coming back, right? And
What was your first memory back?
this was a good one, and if this is what heaven is, then I'll take it. My first lucid memory, and I is, and my wife and I laugh about this, and at the time, it really wasn't funny. I woke up and I looked at the calendar, and I saw the calendar in the room, and I'm like, well, number one, I was a little confused as to where I was, but I saw the calendar, and I'm like, my God, how long have I been asleep? And then I realized that there's 3 women standing around me. They're like got sponges, and they're like talking to each other, having a conversation while I'm just laying there, and they're wiping me down, and I'm like, I look down and I'm like, "Oh my God, I ain't fully naked."
Like, I'm a 50-year-old dude naked with 3 women around me. What happened?
Fully naked, like, what is going on? Who are these women? And that's the thought. I was like, if this is heaven, great. Yeah, I got really aggressive with them because I thought I was convinced in my mind that they were filming me and going to blackmail me. Like they were gonna film me because I was naked. They were gonna film me and put me on social media and just blackmail me and make threats and all. I was convinced, and I got very aggressive with them. And that I remember. I remember screaming at them. And then they, "Give me my phone. Where's my mom? Where's Allison?" And they must have drugged me or something because I, went down. And then when I came back up, when I woke back up, they're like, "Oh, the ladies are here. The ladies are here." My mom and Allison are walking through the door, and they're like, and I was kind of relieved, and I'm like, "Oh my God!" Like, and what is going on?
You lost most of your functions.
Absolutely. Yeah, like when, once they got out of the ICU and I started to get up and, realize, I mean, they started having speech therapists, occupational therapists and physical therapists come and talk to me, because I was, yeah, I mean, physically I couldn't walk or stand. Um, from an occupational, I mean, I was essentially paralyzed, while I was at first, and again, this is a lot I don't remember because I was in that induced coma, but I mean, I couldn't move, like to even move my head or anything like that. Um, So when I came back, I mean, I don't know exactly how functional I was. I mean, I know, they were having me go through, at one point towards the end, I was getting a little bit better. They started having me do aggressive speech therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy for about, well, 5 days a week, 3 hours a day, sometimes 6 days a week, doing that. And, it's horrifying to see some of the videos. We did take some videos while I was in physical therapy of me trying to walk on parallel bars, where you kind of are holding yourself on parallel bars and to see yourself walk. It's horrifying to see. A lot of the drugs that I was on during that period of time too was to make me forget. Even in the ICU, there were periods of time when I would come out, when I would come back, come in and out. Right. And this is in the ICU. And and again, I don't know. This is what I'm being told. My mom said that, I didn't know who she was. I didn't know who Allison was. You ask my mom, I'd be like, do you know who I am? And I said, I don't know who you are, but I think you're a close friend. And, Allison was like, this is your wife, Allison. And I'm like, that's not my wife. I'm married to Jennifer Aniston. I swear to God. that, that is what I said. And they're like, no, 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 no. This is your wife, Allison. And I'm like, well, I guess I have a new wife then.
Oh,
So,
man. What's the mental toll of all of that on you now?
I'm still in a wheelchair today, still working with physical therapy, right? So it's hard for me to forget, right, that this is it's still with me. I'm still working to get myself back to reclaim my independence. And I think that's probably the hardest thing, when they took me out of the hospital again after that 71-day stay. Allison had kind of converted our house and she did a great job. She had put this ramp in our garage. We had 3-car garage. It took up 2 of the spaces in the garage. It was this big metallic industrial looking thing, that they had installed so I could get out of the car and get up and into the house. It had to be snaked in to the into the house. Um, Seeing that ramp, I'll never forget that. When they were driving me home, you're looking out the window and it was just like this world that I didn't recognize, like things I was familiar with, that I've been here millions of times on this road, but I don't recognize any of this. Allison was so excited and wanted to talk on that road, in that ride home. And I just remember like just a head off to the side and looking out the window the whole time. And then we pulled up in the driveway and I saw that ramp and I'm like, oh my God, my life is different. She'd converted the dining room into bedroom because our bed and my office and all that stuff was upstairs and I couldn't get upstairs. We didn't have a bathroom on that main floor. So I'm having to adapt to using a bathroom in a different way. If I wanted to shower, they'd have to wheel me over to the YMCA
Brother.
to shower. And if you ever want to feel dirtier after a shower than you did going into the shower, go to the YMCA. Take a shower, you come out of there and you're like, oh my God.
I mean, everything changed.
Everything.
It was cardiac arrest, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It was cardiac arrest, 71 days in the hospital. I have to ask, what was the hospital bill on that one?
I think 4.
4 million?
Yeah.
Stop.
No, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. I never really did ask. Allison was handling all of that. God bless her. I mean, you've met Allison. She's,
Of course.
God
She's
bless
very
her.
strong,
She's
smart, strong.
She did an amazing job managing all that, so I didn't have to think about it. Kind of how my mom did when I was in the camp with the cancer.
Mm-hmm.
My mom managed everything. So I didn't. So you think about the importance of having a strong support system around you. And I talked about this earlier. Knowing that difference between friends and acquaintances is very important.
I think this brings up a good point. And, obviously you've had a lot of time to reflect, and you can't go through 2, death/near-death experiences without wondering, why am I still alive? And I've seen a kick, you've kind of been like, we've had conversations about, just processing that, like, why am I still here? You've obviously written a book, Resilience Unbroken,
Yep.
my story of 2 survivals, which I personally loved, was very fortunate to be an early reader of that. And then you've come up with kind of some takeaways that you think are super important. And I want to go through those 3 takeaways now, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, I think the first, is you have a choice, right? This idea of resilience is a choice, right? Even when you don't have any control over it. And I certainly didn't have control. I didn't choose the cancer to happen to me. I didn't choose the cardiac arrest. I didn't choose any of that, but what I did choose is to keep moving, right? To keep fighting. I told you I didn't feel like I was going to die in the cancer when, the doctors were telling my parents otherwise. I'd never felt that way. I was never scared, of dying. I think it was with the cardiac arrest, that was a little bit different. Because so much had been taken away from me. I had to learn to eat, learn to walk, learn to talk, learn to this grueling. The anxiety and speech therapy alone was incredibly hard. An idea of choice, right, is you just got to accept, right? I think that's accepting what's happening to you and choose how to deal with it and just appreciating, the time that you do have.
Resilience is a choice even when you have no control.
Correct.
What's next?
Right support system is the difference between surviving and thriving, right? And again, the key here is, knowing your friends and knowing your acquaintances. And they're both important, but they're different. When you are able to kind of identify those folks that are your friends, right? True friends. I mean, there may just be a few. There may be one or two, maybe three. Keep them close, because when you need that, when you need somebody on those dark nights, you're going to have them. I still have moments of, where I'm in the, you know, in the trench of despair. It's like, you got to pull yourself out. And, it's usually Allison that'll pull me out, or my best friend that lives in Colorado that you've met. He's pulled me out a couple of times. And, you keep those folks close to you, tell them you love them, talk to them every, at least once a week, if not more.
Who was it harder on? Do you think it's you or the people who had to witness it so closely?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I know for sure I can't imagine what Allison went through with the cardiac arrest, because she witnessed that firsthand. The cancer was a little bit more of a slow burn, right, where it was happening inside of me. Nobody could really see it. I mean, I told you I was waiting tables that Saturday night, and then I was in the hospital Monday or Sunday night, right? So, I mean, nobody could see that. And I think that was hard. That may be a little bit harder, but I think the cardiac arrest, I can't imagine what that was like for Allison, especially out on the ride, especially when she was alone and it was just her on the trail that we were walking on. I can't imagine. Um, I didn't know what was going on. I was gone. I kind of almost wonder sometimes that, when I talk about friends and acquaintances, that maybe it was hard for the acquaintances, to deal with, to see me like that they didn't want to be around. Right. And that's okay. Right. Because some people deal with things in different ways and whatnot. But I think this establishing that difference between, is important. And it's always been important, continue to be important for me.
The right support system is a difference between surviving and thriving. What's the third lesson?
Struggles don't just leave scars, they leave lessons. The biggest lessons for me is acceptance, and appreciation. Just being kind to people, I think, is probably another key takeaway for this, how hard it is for the people around you to support you. And I think it's important for you to just be kind and give back to those people that are helping you so much. I still struggle a little bit, with purpose. It gets a little bit more clear every day, but I still struggle a little bit with that. Like, why? Why am I still here? How can I be as meaningful as possible with the rest of my life? So I'm being very peculiar, very, with what I do, who I spend my time with. It always kind of makes me laugh when people say, oh, life is short. Life is short. And I'm like, well, if you believe that, do the right thing today, because it can get taken away from you. And I've been witness to that twice now.
What's next for you?
I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. I go to therapy twice a week. I just saw a neurologist yesterday to see kind of where I'm at. He said there's no reason for him to believe that I'm not going to continue to get better. So I'm going to continue to push. I'll get out of this chair.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will.
My goal is to get on my bike again and do RAGBRAI. And I've got a crew of people lined up, people that I did it with the 3 years that I did it, that are all on board to do it with me. So that's my goal. I don't know if I'll get there this year, and if I don't get there this year, I'll get there next year. So this is a long journey. Resilience is a choice, right? I mean, I think that's probably the big takeaway here. Everybody, you have a choice of how you deal with your things that go on in your life on a day-to-day basis. Some of them are pretty, some of them are ugly, some you're gonna like, some you're not gonna like, but you have a choice.
Brad Cunningham, my brother, You are an inspiration. Thank you for choosing to not give up. Thank you for choosing to share your story with us. You've made me a better man today. I think all of our listeners are going to feel that way as well. If they want more, they can go read your book, Resilience Unbroken, My Story of Two Survivals. They can find you on the ether, Brad Cunningham. Anything else you want to say?
I'm very appreciative. You came into my life 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And I do truly believe that people come in and out of I write about this in the book, that people come in and out of your lives for a reason. You may not recognize it at the time when they do come into your life, but people come into your life for a reason. And I look at today as a kind of a living, breathing example of that. We're here talking, after our bike rides in Iowa City. You've gone off to do some very courageous things. And, I'm really incredibly proud of you. Proud to call you a friend. And I appreciate that, we've had an opportunity to do this.
Man, you make me cry. It's such an honor for me. And this was such an enjoyable hour and experience. And I love you, dude. I'm proud of you. And I'm so freaking grateful that you're still here. That's it. Thank you so much for tuning in to Permission to Shine, the podcast dedicated to sharing the most humble, inspiring stories that I know you will love. Again, this is Andrew Nemani. I appreciate you tuning in. As always, please reach out. Please follow on Instagram, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, Spotify, Apple. Leave us your thoughts. Let us know who you want as a future guest or what's your takeaways from this conversation. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great, great week.